Greetings, everybody. This is Ed Willis. Welcome to 2022. This year is going to be a year of several gifts. And the first gift I'm going to share with you today is the knowledge and wisdom of this book called The Science of the Breath by Yogi Ramacharaka. Now, most of us know that the process of breath is very important, vital to our life and our sustainability. But I'm going to go into a lot of the deeper understanding of the breath and why it is so important on a much higher level and connected to many other things that are associated with it. So the way the yogi broke it down in the book, he broke it down as far as the exoteric side, which is the physical side, the side that we can see with our senses, and then he broke down the esoteric side, some of the things that we may not be aware of that are hidden from our normal senses, but are very vital just the same. So, a lot of people may say, well, what does Ed know about, he's not a doctor, he doesn't know anything, he's not a medical doctor or anything like that. But, I would say look at it like I'm your mechanic. I'm going to break down how your vehicle, our bodies operate and show you how to get the best performance and the most longevity out of the vehicle. So let's just go ahead and start with the exoteric side of the system as he breaks it down in the book. So he starts off with saying, explaining the organs of respiration. And the organs of respiration are starting with the two lungs. You have one lung on each side of the meridian, and they're both contained inside what is called the pleural chamber, as the chest cavity, open part of the chest cavity. And the lungs, they expand, they're very flexible and and porous, and they expand out in all directions except at the root, where they're connected to the bronchial tubes, which are eventually connected to your trachea or your windpipe. In addition to that, the lungs are each individually contained into what's called a pleural sac, which is another very durable protective shell that is, very elastic, and it's lubricated on the inside, and it's attached to the inside of your chest on one side, and the back side is connected to your lung. And so when you breathe, it allows, when the lungs expand and contract, through the breathing process, it allows the, it doesn't, it reduces the friction and doesn't cause any, wear and tear on the lungs themselves, which could cause a problem in and of itself. So in addition to the lungs, there's, like I say, I mentioned the bronchial tubes, which start at the trachea and they branch out. That's what branchias are, they're branches. And they start out as large branches and they continue to get smaller and smaller branches till they actually connect to the lungs. And, one of the other peculiar parts that he mentions about the organs of respiration, he mentions the blood vessels, the large and small blood vessels in that area. And most of us wouldn't think that those are part of the breathing process, but we'll get into explaining why that is and the extreme importance of that. Now, the second part he mentions is the air passages that are associated with the respiration. So that starts with your nose, obviously, and inside your nose you have small hairs in there, which are like little filters that filter out the dirt and debris that's in the atmosphere, and to prevent that from reaching into your lungs and causing respiratory issues. And then one of the most important parts he mentions related to the nostrils is that we are supposed to breathe through our nose and not our mouth, because when you breathe through your mouth, you have nothing to stop the the dirt and debris in the atmosphere from getting into your lungs. So he even mentions, like, if you look at all the animals, they all breathe through their nose. None of the animals breathe through their mouths. But sometimes we, as humans, have problems breathing through our mouth because of our our teeth structure, or our jaw structure, or any other deformities that we may have. And so that's understandable, but we want to try our best and often as possible to breathe through the nose, which is the proper way to breathe. So, and in addition to the nostrils, you have the pharynx, which is at the back of the nose, and then just below that you have the larynx, which connects to the windpipe at the base of your throat. So those are the air passages associated with the respiration. Now, like I said, the breathing process is so important to the body that it's even taken out of our control, and that in itself should explain to you, how important it is. We're not even, capable of maintaining that on our own. So that is one of the part of the automatic systems in the body that, do its work on its own, and we just assist it or whatever. Because, you can slow down your breath, you can speed up your breath, you can even stop your breath for a minute or two, but eventually you're going to have to breathe again, and that's part of the automatic part of the system. Now, the actual breathing process is also tied to the diaphragm, which is a large sheet-like muscle across the front of your chest, and it separates the abdomen and the stomach from your rib cage. So when you breathe, your diaphragm expands, which separates the two, and it creates like a vacuum, and the air is actually just drawn into your lungs. If you ever really paid attention to your breathing, you don't really put the air into your lungs. By the process of the diaphragm expanding, which is automatic, the air is just like sucked into your lungs, And then when your diaphragm contracts, then it's like pushed out of your, the carbon dioxide and all of that is pushed out of your lungs in the same way. Automatically. You should really sit and meditate on that and watch that process, and you'll realize that even that part of it, we think we're doing actual breathing, but a lot of that is even done on its own, through the vacuum suction process and the reverse process as it leaves the body. So, before we go into the other parts of the breathing, what I wanted to bring up is the portion that's related to the blood vessels that was mentioned as part of the respiratory system. So, when our heart pumps blood, the blood leaves our heart out of the left ventricle, and it goes through the arteries, and when it leaves the left ventricle, it has the air, the fresh air that's in our system, and also the nutrients, and that's carried through the arteries. So you can always remember air and arteries, those are the veins, those are the blood vessels that carry the nutrients and the oxygen to the organs and the different cells of the body. Now, when the blood leaves the body, we're in Mercury retrograde right now, so I may stumble on a few words, but when the blood leaves the heart, it's full of nutrients and oxygen rich, and it's like a stream of fresh spring water, mountain spring water, that's crystal clear, or as clear as it can be for the blood. And that goes out and it feeds all the different cells and organs of the body. And when it gets to the cells and organs, it exchanges, it gives off, the air and the nutrients and the blood. And then the organs and the cells, have waste and byproduct toxins that, the body can't use. And that's given back to the blood system, but not to the arteries. It's given to the veins or the venous system. And if you ever seen a picture of, the human body and they're showing the blood vessels in the body, Part of them are red, and that represents the arteries that has the nutrients and oxygen-rich material. And then you'll see the blue ones that are colored blue, and those are the veins, which all the toxins and waste of the body are dumped into the veins, and so that they can be eliminated through eliminated from the body through the veins. Now so it leaves the heart rich and crystal clear like a spring water, and then it returns back toward the heart through the veins like sewer water. So that's how it's kept separate. So when this dirty blood and toxin laden blood returns back towards the heart, it reaches the heart, and it comes in through the right auricle, which is the lower chamber on the right side of your heart. And then when that chamber fills up, it's pumped up into the right ventricle. And then when that is filled up, it's pumped not back to the left ventricle and back into the body. It's sent out through a series of hair-like blood vessels that are attached to the right ventricle, and they leave the right ventricle and they head to the lungs. And then you might say, well, how does the blood go into the lungs and not choke us or anything like that? So what's going on is when the blood is in these hair-like blood vessels, the blood vessels are very porous, not porous enough to let the blood leak out, but when it reaches the lungs, these blood vessels pass through the lungs, and they're attached on both sides to what are called alveolus, or alveoli, the plural. And these are air sacs on both sides of these little small hair-like blood vessels. And as the dirty blood, the toxin-filled blood reaches these air sacs, from each pump of the blood, each beat of the heart, the blood is pumped to these air sacs, and like I say, it doesn't leak out of the blood vessels, but when it comes in contact with the air and the air sacs, when you exhale, inhale, and exhale, that air basically purifies the blood in your system. You don't get new blood. It's the same blood that circulates through your body all the time. Obviously, you produce new blood cells, red blood cells and white blood cells over time, but for the most part, it's the same blood circulating through your system. And so when it hits these air sacs, the air in the air sacs basically purifies all the blood that it comes in contact with. So that's why it's very important to breathe, not just our normal 18 breaths a minute, but we need to go excessively and set specific times out where we do breathing practices like I'm going to explain later that make sure that the blood is clean. Because if you're not breathing, because most of us on a normal basis, we're sitting at a desk watching TV, working, we're breathing very shallow, and so it's questionable whether we're getting enough oxygen into our system to truly clean the blood. Because if not, then that dirty blood, that toxin-filled blood gets pumped back into the system, whether it's clean or not. So that's why it's very important to do not just a normal breathing, but spend extra time breathing to make sure it's clean. So when you look at that, you really understand that that's how our body is designed to clean itself. That's how the cells and organs clean themselves, by the oxygen, that cleans the blood. So it's very important, to the vehicle that you have to do this breathing. And that's how it's designed. Your body's not clean by the food we eat. It's not clean by the water we drink. There's no other process in the body that actually cleans out your system. It's done by, it's done by the air in the lungs, truly purifies the blood. And that in and of itself is just amazing, in and of itself. but it gets even more amazing as we continue. So then once the blood is purified in the lungs, it's sent back through another series of blood vessels back to the left auricle, which is a lower chamber on the left side, and then it fills up, and then once it's full, it pumps it up into the left ventricle, which then again pushes it out into the system and feeds feeds the organs and cells of the body. And so this is how our body is designed. So it's very, very important that you do the breathing, because if not, you're just going to return all these toxins and waste byproducts that's supposed to leave the body and be purified by the breath. But and so if they're not, you're going to create diseases. You're going to create other problems in your system, in the vehicle that you have, and it's going to cause problems. Eventually, you might end up with a blood disease, something like that. So, those things explain to you that our body is designed this way, and that's why you have to go out of your way not to just do the normal breathing, but to do excessive breathing like that. So, one of the other things I wanted to mention that aren't necessarily in the book, but I like to look at the numbers. So when you look at the numbers, based on what we've been told by the medical industry, the breathing, we basically breathe on an average 18 breaths per minute, and our heart pumps 72 beats per minute. So if you just look at those two numbers, 72 and 18, you divide 72 by 18, and that's 4. So that means that our blood has to pump 4 times more than our breathing, so that the system is balanced, But when you look at the 18 breaths per minute on its own, so if you say, well, I breathe 18 breaths per minute, well, let's wonder how many breaths do you have in an hour or in a day? So if you take 18 breaths per minute and you multiply that by 60, you're going to get 1,080 breaths per hour. That's amazing. That's a lot of breaths. No one's probably ever really sat down and counted that, continually counted that number of breaths, So then when you take the 1,080 breaths that you take on an average in an hour, you multiply that by 24 hours in a day, and you get 25,920 breaths in a day. Just one day, 25,920. And just as a quantity, that's amazing in and of itself. But when you look at it from an esoteric standpoint and a cosmic standpoint, the 25,920 is the exact number of years in the precession of the equinox, which, and if you don't understand or know what the precession of the equinox is, you should look that up. But it has to do with the wobble and the rotation of the planet as it moves through its, as it rotates through its cycles. Now, so that's showing you that as above, so below. The workings of the cosmos is also related to, and the numbers are equivalent to the workings of your body. So that's very important to see, because we need to see how all this is tied together. The planets and the stars and all that stuff, it's not just artwork up there. It is, they say we are a microcosm of the cosmos, meaning a smaller version, operating on the same principles, but on a smaller scale, like the fractal. Like as the fractal starts out large, it continues to get smaller and smaller, but it has all the same attributes as the original. So now let's look at the blood. The blood, we say, is your heart pumps, your heart beats 72 beats per minute. So I looked up, how much blood is pumped in each beat. So I looked it up, and it said that it was 1/3 of a cup of blood is pumped in each and every beat. So, you think, well, that's not that much blood, but, let's look at that on the whole minute. So if you take 72 beats per minute and you divide that by 3, because 1/3 of a cup, if you divide that by 3, that would give you how many whole cups your heart pushes out in a minute. So 72 beats per minute, divided by 3 equals 24. So that means your body pumps 24 cups of blood every minute. So even that, it's hard to kind of get a visual of all that, 24 cups of blood. So let's convert that to ounces. So when you take, there's 8 ounces in a cup, so you multiply 24 times 8, that would give you 192 ounces. So even still looking at 192 ounces, that's hard to, kind of wrap your head around. So let's look at it in something we're more familiar with, like gallons. So we know that there's 128 ounces in a gallon. So if we divide 192 ounces is what we have in an hour, then then you would get that would be in a minute. Then that would give you divide 192 by 128 ounces in a gallon, that would give you 1.5. So that means that in a minute you're pumping through your heart 1.5 gallons of blood every single minute. So, now once again, let's see about how that affects us in a whole day, the quantities of that in a whole day. So you take 1.5 gallons in a minute and you multiply that by 60, that gives you 90 gallons in an hour. So in 1 hour, your body pumps out of the heart 90 gallons of blood. Now, obviously, it's the same blood being circulated through the process that I just described previously, but 90 gallons of blood are pumped through the heart in an hour. So now, once again, let's multiply that by 24. So 90 times 24, that gives you 2,160 gallons of blood is pumped through your heart on a daily basis, every single day. And this goes on, all this, the breathing, the blood pumping, all that goes on without any of your input. It just happens automatically. So this number, 2,160, is another very peculiar number, and is tied to the cosmos. 2,160 is the number of years in an astrological age. So, astrological age refers to, like, we were just in the age of Pisces, and that's 2,160 years. Now we've just transitioned into the age of Aquarius, which is another 2,160 years. Now, if there's 12 signs as astrological zodiac signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, 12 of them. So if you multiply 12 times the 2,160, that brings you back to the same number, 25,920. So as you go through the whole procession of the equinox, it's like going through each of the individual ages of 2,160 years. I think that is pretty amazing. And, we look down on our bodies, and most of us aren't happy with our bodies and our vehicle. But when you look at the amazing facts and the figures that are associated with the process of your body, and all this goes on without any of your, the parts that I've just mentioned go on without any of your actual input, this vehicle you have is very amazing. It's probably the most amazing thing in the universe, And so when you look at it even further, Um, and so, we, most, like I said, we're not happy with, our bodies, you know, you know, there's different parts of our bodies that may not work properly. We might have a busted headlight or a broken, a flat tire, in the sense of our body. But even if you have that, and you have a belly button, you are amazing in being, and the you have the opportunity to the highest level of divinity, which is reaching back to to our source, which is God, Allah, whatever you want to refer to it as, spirit, is what I like to use. But so the process, having this vehicle is very, very, very important. And if you have one, you should be honored and understand how you're blessed to have this. Because all the things, there's a lot of things that are working, that mimic, the functions of the body. Let's take the car for instance. That's why I use the vehicle as a representation of the body, because I wanted to show you also how our cars, any car you have, truck, anything like that, works pretty much on this same principle. You have the air. Our bodies use the air. A car uses the air. It takes in the air and ignites the spark from the spark plug that creates a mini explosion, which moves the pistons, which starts the motion. And then we have the blood in our body, which I've described that. But the car has oil, and it works the same way. The oil in the blood is, the blood works in our vehicle just like the oil works in, it's very similar to how it works in the car. And, a lot of people say, well, the oil, from that we get from the planet to run our cars is from the dinosaurs. No, stop that. It has nothing to do with that. The oil in the planet that they extract from the planet, that these vampires extract from the planet, is actually the lifeblood of the planet. It's just like the blood in our body. The oil is just like that inside the earth, And that's why we need to get off this petrodollar. And that's why we need to get off these, these vehicles that use oil. We should be using solar and other higher forms of energy to navigate, and we should not be using the blood of the planet, which is the oil. Now also we have fuel. We take in fuel as far as food and water and different nutrients like that, plants and things. But the car uses its own form of fuel, which is still taken from the blood, and which is still taken from the oil, the blood of the planet, and through a process they get the gasoline, which fuels the vehicle. And then obviously, which I don't want to mention too much, but we have an exhaust system. The car has an exhaust system, and we have an exhaust system too, but I guess that's all I'm going to say about that. So, but before we get into the esoteric side of it, just want to reiterate, that, our body is designed to clean itself and purify itself by the breath. And that's how it's designed. That's how it's designed right out of the factory, But, and even just the process of having a body, the process of getting a body is very amazing in and of itself. We start out as just a consciousness, in the heavens, with our eternal soul and our consciousness. And then we specifically decide to come to this planet. We're not just pushed down here and forced to go to these things. You actually raise your hand and you say, I would like to go down to Earth, which is a school, and learn the lessons on the physical plane that are going to help me evolve on the spiritual plane. So that's the process that we actually go. So when you leave the heavens, you come down through the lower dimensions. And then when you get to like the fourth or fifth dimensions, even before you get your physical body, you go through the portals. And the portals I'm referring to are the planets and the other celestial beings in our solar system. And when you pass through the portals, you pick up the qualities and energies of those portals. So you pass through Pluto, you pass through Neptune, you pass through Uranus, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and Venus and Mercury. You pick up all the qualities during the 9 months that you're in your mother's that you're being developed in your mother's womb. You're picking up these qualities of these portals, and as you get so those are the first seven portals, and now there's some other ones like the North and South Node and Chiron and other things like that that are out there too that you pick up energies from. But the main major portals that you pass through are the planets, and you pick up all the qualities and attributes that they have to give you, and you can study that, and I'll probably have a separate class on astrology to go deeper into those attributes and those qualities of these portals. Now, after you go through those seven, the last two you go through is the sun, the portal of the sun. Now, and like I say, all of this, you're still not in your physical body. You're on the fourth, fifth dimension. And so, you don't have to worry about getting burned up or anything like that. You're not in your physical body yet. So, when you pass through the sun portal, you pick up your personality. And that's what your sun sign is in astrology, is your personality, what makes you different from everybody else, or at least the other 11 different body types and personality types that are on the planet. There's only 12 types of people on the planet, and those are based on your sun sign. But, your other, the other portals you go through more, specifically design your individual vehicle so that it's different from everyone else's vehicles. Because there's no sense for all of us to be the same. The beauty in this is the opposites. Opposites attract, and you're not attracted to the same thing like you. You want something that complements you, that picks up the aspects that you may not be prominent or dominant in your personality. You're looking for the aspects that are opposite that would complement you. So you pick up the qualities in your personality from the sun portal, and then you go to the moon portal, which is where you pick up your emotional disposition, your emotional qualities and how you handle things on an emotional level. So those are the 9 portals that you pass through in the 9 months before your physical body is ready to come through your mother's womb. And that's why, I mentioned also being attached to your belly button, because now you've gone through the 9 portals and now you're ready to be birthed. And so once you reach Earth, the last stages, and you're getting ready to come through on the physical plane, your body, the Earth gifts you with the 5 elements: fire, air, earth, and water, and also the salts and minerals of the earth. And it cloaks all this, it cloaks all your, it cloaks your consciousness and all the qualities that you picked up from the portals, and cloaks it with your physical body, which is the earth. And so it gifts that to you for you to use to navigate in this third dimension. So it's, once again, this is just an amazing process that you go through to actually end up on this planet. And so, and like you're saying, you come through attached to your mom through the umbilical cord, which is attached to your belly button. Now, and so it's very important also, your parents, the parents, your mother and father that, are responsible for, coming together to bring you to this planet, because you have to earn and qualify for the parents that you have, and this gets into the aspect of reincarnation And I know a lot of religious people will be like, oh, reincarnation, I don't believe in that, But if you believe in, you believe in God and you think that you come from God and that you have an eternal soul and all of that, then you definitely believe, or you should believe and understand reincarnation, because when you say that you have an eternal soul, that means that before you got to earth, you were somewhere. And then after you leave earth, you go in somewhere. That's reincarnation. But, it's not just one and done. You're going to go through this process multiple times, thousands, hundreds of thousands of times, or however long it takes you to figure out what's going on here. So you have to qualify for your parents, and you qualify for your parents based on your previous existence. Now, if you was so you want to try to get the best parents you can, but that's based on how you acted in your previous life. Now, in your previous life, you was mean and dirty and abusive, and you treated your kids and other people in your life bad. You're not going to end up with no good parents. You're going to end up with parents that are going to abuse you, or, neglect you, or beat you, or anything, multiple things like that. And so that's why it's so important to be good, because it's not just being good for the sake of being good, because you do have free will, so you have the opportunity to do whatever you want. You can be bad if you want. You can do bad things if you want, but karma is going to have to swing back, and you're going to have to deal with that. So, that's why it's so important, to move in a positive direction, because it's going to affect you in the future. And you won't even understand, because every time you come through, you make an agreement that you forget all your past lives and you have to start over. And so it's best you're not going to remember all those things from your past life, so you need to come through and be good, so that you can set up a good life for your next time around. Because, and it's not even so much just as an individual basis. Sometimes the karma is group karma that you go through. Your whole family might be dealing with the same karma. Like, all the men in your family, we all know people who, all the men in the family been to jail, or, been in trouble, and, or, been into a lot of, bad things. Or the women, they all seem to pick the same bad type of guys, or the same, going through the same things, abusive men or abusive relationships, or, stuff like that. So sometimes it's not even just your individual, as if that you doing bad stuff like that on an individual, you'll be grouped with another group of bad individuals, and y'all have to go out and try to figure that out together, or, you'll figure it out. And sometimes, even the families aren't even cohesive in themselves. You hope to have a good family where, everyone's working on, in a positive, everyone's sharing love and being respectful to each other. But then other times families, are backbiting and backstabbing, and, ain't no one's trying to support or help out the other. It's always, I'm going out for self, and, forget everybody else. So, it's always best to try to be good, because it's only going to lay the foundation for where you go from here. And even even in the religious aspect, there's ministers out there that most of them are good and with good intentions and stuff, but there's ministers out there taking the congregation who comes to them looking for spiritual guidance and spiritual development, and they're manipulating them for their money or other things like that. And you got to pay for all that. You're not going to get away with that. At some point or another, you're going to have to deal with that. And from that standpoint, if you so-called got the calling, to be a religious leader, or some type of shaman or guru, or where your calling is to help others, and to help others through this process and transition and development on planet Earth. This isn't something you retire from. You don't retire from this. This is something that's a lifelong calling. you look at the gurus and the monks, who study in the temples and in Tibet and China and what was I going to say? And in India also. That's I was trying to think of India, and then even in the Americas and Africa, the shamans and stuff like that. This is a lifelong work. This isn't something you do for 15, 20 years and then you retire. You get a wing or a plaque or something like that. This is a lifelong thing. That's why those are really crucial positions that you really got to be on your point, because if you don't, you can't imagine the stuff that you're going to deal with on the next level. So, those are some of the things I just wanted to tie in, to this whole process of breathing and show how all of this is connected. But now we're going to talk briefly about the esoteric side of this whole breathing process. And with that, we talked about the breathing and the air and all that. But something else, when you're taking in the air, there's something else in the air which is called prana. Some people call it ether, things like that. But prana is an ancient word from the Sanskrit language, which means absolute energy. The absolute energy is a perfect term for this because it's what you would consider undifferentiated energy, and it's used by all creatures and plants on the planet, plants and animals on the planet, because it's what gives you your animation and allows you to grow and give you your volition, So, when you think of absolute in the terms of math, in your math class, absolute was just a quantity. It wasn't positive, it wasn't negative, it wasn't anything, it was just a quantity. And that's what the prana is. It's the quantity of this substance, this energy that's undifferentiated, that it can be used by all of us. Animals and humans, they assimilate the air and the oxygen. Plants and trees and flowers and things like that, they assimilate the carbon and carbon dioxide, but all of us use the prana, because that's what gives us our opportunity to grow and to move from different places throughout the planet, or to grow tall and big and strong like the trees in the forest and things like that, so, but also, the prana is, there's air in the prana when you breathe, but even when the air isn't available, like in a vacuum, there's still prana, because prana permeates the whole universe, and so people might say, well, why do I got to do all this breathing to get the prana, well, because in the air, it's the easiest way to assimilate the prana is to get it out of the air, because it's much more easier to get it than out of any other four elements, like solid, rocks and earth like that, or fire, So that's why it's best for us to do the breathing, because that's the way we can get the most prana. And prana can be stored in the body just like in a battery. It can be stored in the body and used for later. And so that's the prana. And and like you say, it's what gives us our volition, our motion, and our growth. And the air is used by the body, by the organs and things like that. But the prana is used by the nervous system. The nervous system is what makes you move, that makes you move your hands and fingers, makes you run and walk and things like that. And that's what the prana does, And you can store that up, store up that energy for future use, So that's how the prana is used by the nervous system. So just to briefly talk about the nervous system, we, I drew this diagram, which kind of breaks it down, similar to the way he explains it in the book. but you have what he calls the cerebral spinal system, and you have the sympathetic system. The cerebral spinal system is consistent of your brain, the different parts of your brain, the cerebrum, the cerebellum, the medulla oblongata, and your cranial nerves, which continue down to the spinal column through your vertebrae all the way down to your tailbone, and then your sympathetic system is controlling your automatic functions of circulation, respiration, and digestion. So that's how the nervous system is using the prana to do those types of things. And so like I say, so then when you get to the sympathetic nervous system, you have what I have shown in here. I hope you can see it. But on the spinal column, you have a double chain, a ganglion, and the ganglion are part of your sympathetic system. The ganglion are little nerve matter and nerve cells that are attached to each of the vertebrae along your spinal column, and they connect to your nerves in your spinal column and in your brain through your motor nerves and your sensory nerves. And then, so you have the ganglion, you have the double chain of ganglion on your spinal column, but then you also have ganglion, which are just, like I say, nerve matter and nerve cells. They're also located on all your vital organs, within the thorax, lumbar, and cervical regions of your body. The top, middle, and lower portions of your body, and all the organs in there have little ganglion on there. And so the ganglion that are on your spinal column are connected to the ganglion on your organs by small nerve fibers. And these nerve fibers are either effectors or affector fibers, meaning like when it's dark, say for instance it's dark in a room, and your brain sends a signal to say, hey, I need more light, so it'll send it down through the nerves, send it through the ganglion, and then it sends it to the ganglion that's attached to your eye or your retina, and it will dilate your pupil, which will let in more light. That's how it's affecting, your sight. And then the system works the opposite way. If it's too much light in a room, it'll automatically make your pupils shrink to take in less light, so that you don't have so it doesn't damage your eyes by taking in too much light. So that's how and this happens on all the organs, the eyes, the lungs, the heart, the stomach, the pancreas, spleen, liver, your intestines, your bladder, your sexual organs. There's ganglion on all those individual organs, and they're tied through these effector and affector nerve fibers that tie them back to the brain through the motor and sensory nerves. So that is the basic function of the breathing system, and how it is also associated, the breathing, with the air and all that, and also the prana, which, runs the nervous system. So those two work in tandem to, and that's how we operate our body. So now that I've basically gone through the functions of the body on an exoteric side and an esoteric side, I just want to briefly touch in on a couple of the actual breathing practices. The book itself probably has 20 or 30 different breathing practices for different times of day, for different organs and things like that. But, I'm just going to touch on a couple today, which is just to give you the basics to get you started. But like I said, you basically want to try to spend some time in the morning, because when you do this breathing and you do the breathing and get the air and you take in the prana, that's what's going to wake you up and make you more awake in the morning. And you may not need that cup of coffee or that second, third cup of coffee. Drinking coffee all day is not really helping your body either. So you want to use the natural form of waking yourself up is with the prana and the oxygen. You fill up your oxygen, feeds the organs, and then they're ready to start moving. And you take in the prana, and then that gets your nervous system running, and you're ready to do your day. So you really want to practice that. And also, and it's weird how it can wake you up in the morning, but then after a stressful day, taking some time to do some breathing in the evening or before you go to bed will kind of reduce that stress and let you, because sometimes people have trouble sleeping at night and, or restless and stuff like that. Take some time and just do some basic breathing practices, and it'll eventually slow the body down and calm you down and allow you to, to get some rest and to get a good night's sleep. So, the way he explains it in the book is there's 4 types of breathing. He refers to them as lower breathing, mid breathing, and upper breathing, and then the last one I'll get to in a second. But the first one he refers to lower breathing is when you're breathing, your stomach expands out. Kind of pokes out as you're breathing in, and then, when you exhale, it comes back in. And then there's the middle breathing, which when you breathe, your chest kind of expands out, but, your stomach stays in, and then it goes back in when you exhale. And then high breathing is when you breathe and your shoulders raise up like that. So, and then, so you have those different types of breathing, but he says, none of those are the proper way to breathe. The proper way to breathe is the complete breath, which basically takes in all 3 of those and does them all at the same time, or, as a system. So when you do that, you're breathing in and your stomach starts to expand a little bit. As you continue, your chest kind of sticks out and expands a little bit. And then at the end of the breath, your shoulders raise up like that. That's what's called the complete breath. And he said that's the proper way to breathe. And then also when you're breathing, when you're doing these breathing exercises, it's also good to do mudras. It's a way to get a 2 for 1. To do 2 different things that can help the body at the same time. Now the mudras are just basically hand positions and basically connecting certain energy channels in your body, because all the energy channels run through both of your hands. And also your fingers, each of your fingers are tied to one of the elements. Like your thumbs represent fire, and the thumbs, that's referred to, and from as far as the mudras are concerned, your thumbs are called Ajni, A-G-N-I. That's your fire element. Then you have your index finger, which is called Vayu, and that's your air element. And then your middle finger, which reaches the highest of all your fingers into the air, reaches the highest up of all your fingers, that's called Akash, because it reaches highest into the ether, to the, up into the atmosphere. And then your ring finger is called Prithvi, which is Prithvi, and that's your earth element. That's tied to your earth element. And then your pinky is called Jal, J-A-L, and that's your water element. So when you combine different fingers together, you're connecting different energy channels in the body, which can heal the body and things like that. But I'll go more into that when I do a separate class on the mudra. But But that's another thing to do, because you can sit there and hold different mudra poses while you're doing your breathing, and you get two things done at once. And but I won't go any more into the mudras at this time. So, the main breath that I'd like to share with you today, there's, like I said, there's tons of different breathing practices in the book, and I really encourage you to get the book, because there's so much that I didn't even touch on, but I just wanted to hit the high points and also to show you how everything's all interconnected. But the main breathing practice that you should start with, and also when you're breathing, when you're doing the breathing exercises, you want to be comfortable. Now, they say the best way is to sit in the lotus pose like I've been sitting here the whole time talking to you, but that may not be comfortable for you. You may want to stand up. You could do these breathing practices and the mudras. You could do them both standing up, or you could lay down, or you could just sit on your buttocks and with your legs out in front of you. Whatever's comfortable to you, because you have to be comfortable, or else you won't do it. You won't stay with it. So you have to find your comfortable position and do that, and get into that comfortable position so you can do this and then stick with it. So the main one I want to start with today is what's called the alternate nostril breathing. And before I get into that, I also wanted to tell you that the other mudra that is even more vital to the finger mudras is the Kachari mudra, which is when you place the tip of your tongue to the roof of your mouth, right behind that rigid part of your upper palate. When you connect that to the roof of your mouth, when you connect the tip of your tongue to the roof of your mouth, that's called Kachari mudra, and that also calms the body. It has multiple functions, and it also connects different energy channels in the body, and that in itself can heal you as well. And that's something you can even do while you're watching TV. As long as you're not talking, you should really have your tongue on the roof of your mouth connecting to one of the energy channels. And the yogis, what they do is not even just put it right there at the back of the rigid part. They continue to move the tip of the tongue to the further and further back on the roof of the mouth, even to the point of getting close to going up into the nostril and the nasal cavity, in the pharynx behind your nose, because there's even different energy channels that you connect to there. I've even heard that the yogis even cut the under part of their tongue, where your tongue is connected to the lower part of your mouth. They'll cut that slightly so that their tongue can reach further and further back, and then eventually get up into the nasal cavity, back there, and connect to other energy channels. And that's very important. Now, I wouldn't suggest anyone do the cutting of the tongue. You don't need to go that far. If you just put it on the roof of your mouth, that's more than sufficient. So now back to the breathing practice of the alternate nostril breathing. Sorry, this Mercury retrograde is really rough today. So the alternate nostril breathing is a way to build what's called the corpus callosum, which is the part that connects the left and the right side of your brain. And by doing this practice, it strengthens that bond between the left and the right side of the brain, which helps, helps with neuroplasticity, and helps, different parts of the body integrate and work together in a better way. Because also, like, if you have brain injuries, you have brain trauma, or if you had a, brain cancer or something like that, where part of your brain was removed, what can happen is a different part of your brain that may not have naturally been responsible for that function that was lost by the part that was removed, it can pick up that attribute and take care of that function, but it's also relying on the corpus callosum that's connecting the two sides of your brain. And so this breathing practice called alternate nostril breathing helps to strengthen the bond between the left and the right side. And so just briefly, I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, if you've never done this before, you may want to use your fingers to help assist you in the process. But basically what you do is you close one nostril and you breathe in through the open nostril. And you want to start out just using a count of 4. You take in a breath for a count of 4, you hold it for a 4 count, and then you release it out of the opposite nostril on a 4 count, and then you pause for a 4 count, and then you start the process all over again. So if you're using your fingers, sorry, I'm running out of breath doing all this talking, but you would start with hold your nostril with your pinky, and then you take your breath in, and then switch. Alright, and that's how you do it if you've never done it before. That helps you, make sure each nostril is closed and you're only breathing in the air from one nostril at a time. But after you do this for a while, you'll learn how to do it just by, like kind of, when you kind of twerk your mouth to one side, you can kind of close one nostril and just breathe in through the other nostril. And now, obviously, there may be some air that comes through the one that you're trying to close, but it's okay. The majority of the air is going to come through the open nostril. And so to do that, you just do like, and so that's basically the alternate nostril breathing. That's very, very beneficial, like I say, to build and strengthen the left and the right side of your brain, as well as just, the other parts of breathing that we discussed earlier. Now, just, as I close this out, I just wanted to mention one last breathing practice that you should do after you're done with all your breathing for the day, for your session. You want to do what's called the complete breath. And what that does, it tries to expel all the carbon dioxide out of your lungs that may build up from our shallow breathing throughout the day. And so as you do your normal breath in, when you do that part, and then you exhale, and obviously don't hurt yourself or strain yourself, but you want to exhale really hard through the mouth, to try to push out all the carbon dioxide that are in the actual air sacs, that, remnants that are, didn't get expelled through the normal breathing practice. So when you breathe in, and then I'll show you how you breathe out. So you breathe in, now, obviously, like you said, you don't want to hurt yourself or strain yourself or pull a muscle, nothing like that. But by pushing out excessively like that, it kind of cleans out the lung and cleans out any residual carbon dioxide that's in your lungs, so that you can take in nice, fresh, so there's plenty of room when you breathe in to take in the good air and the oxygen. So those are the breathing, so that is the science of the breath that I wanted to share with you today. Now, I'm going to start a YouTube channel called Willis Academy of Higher Learning, which is, Willis Academy is what we use for our homeschooling that we did for our kids over the last 20 years. But I've added higher learning because we're going to go into the higher aspects of learning and taking things to the next level and seeing the spiritual side and seeing how the interconnected oneness of different practices like sacred geometry and the singing bowls that you see here and the vibration and music and how to incorporate all these into your daily activities to help repair, strengthen, and give longevity to this vehicle that we've been gifted with from Spirit. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it, and then look for this video and other videos on my upcoming YouTube channel. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Namaste.